Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulil Kareem, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. You know, it's my father was actually, some of you know my father, he's one of the founders of IQRA. And so he came in 1971, and when I hear Rashad come up here and say, Abu, I had an emotional moment, and I feel like I've got to go visit my dad tomorrow. Thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I'm grateful, I'm honored, to be here. As I mentioned, I'm second generation American Muslim. My parents are immigrants. They came from Pakistan. I have 6 children, alhamdulillah. My children are ages 8 to 21. I have 8 siblings, 8 brothers and sisters. Between my parents, my nieces, my nephews, there are actually 60 of us across now 3 generations here in America. We used to visit Pakistan when I was younger, when my nani and my dadi were alive. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them Jannah. But since then, and also some khalas and some chachas and they've all passed away, now we're all pretty much embedded here. As I said, some of you know the Islamic Circle of North America, IQRA, my father, Dr. Tayyab Yunus, he was one of the founders of that in 1971. My mother is actually the grandniece of Maulana Gondalavi, who was a graduate of Medina University and one of the first professors from India at Medina University. So you can imagine growing up in this house. Dad is the founder of this important organization, and Mom, the only language she spoke was Hadith. That was the only language in the house. There's a reason why I'm telling you that story. A few weeks ago, and every year, all 60 of us, we get together in the Smoky Mountains. All 60 of us, because I have a sister, 2 sisters who live in New York City. I've got a brother in Dallas, a sister in Oklahoma City, and there's 3 or 4 of us in the Southeast. I now live in Orlando, Florida. And we get together in the Smoky Mountains once a year. It's the Yunus family reunion. And I just returned a couple of weeks ago. 30 nieces and nephews. Out of all of them, the majority, even some of my own children, have attended or are attending an Islamic school. Out of my brothers and sisters, out of their spouses, everyone has either founded or is working with or is on the board of some Islamic organization. Everyone's involved. So you would think, okay, really cool story, right? A generation generating more teachers and leaders. But something interesting happens. While I'm at the Yunus family reunion, and yes, my nieces, they make t-shirts for everybody to wear, funny ones for my parents. My sister comes to me and says, I need to talk to you. I say, yeah, what's up, Baji? And she says, so-and-so, who's now graduated high school, he wants to get a degree in music and art. I said, yeah, so what's the big deal? Let him get a degree in music and art. He says, yeah, but his dad, who's an immigrant from Pakistan, is having a hard time grappling that. How's he gonna make money? How are we gonna tell our neighbors and friends that our son is now doing a degree in music and art? Worse, how am I gonna tell Ummi that her grandson is doing a degree in music and art, right? At least 20 hadith are about to come out about music. I'm going to come back to that story. As the brother mentioned, today I am working with the Center on Muslim Philanthropy. And at the center of Muslim philanthropy, we actually are focused on building capacity for Muslim nonprofits. When I was in high school, Abu said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Abu, I want to do Islamic work like you. But I don't want to be a doctor like you." He said, "Then that's fine, but you need to establish a strong financial base." That's the traditional mental model, right? The traditional mental model is either you make a bunch of money and you give it away, or you go work for nonprofits. Right? Those are the two models that exist. And he was basically teaching me this model. Fine, you don't want to be a doctor? Fine. But find another profession where you can make good money and then give away from your excess. Give away from your excess time, give away from your excess money. And so I went and I actually built a global healthcare company. It was right here in Chicago. I lived in Oak Brook, 15 years. And 15 years later, I went back to Abu in 2015. I said, "Abu, alhamdulillah, the healthcare company is doing good. I want to now go do Islamic work." And he said, "Son," beta, really, not son. He said, "Beta, think about what Allah taught you in these 15 years. Think about what problem you want to solve and go be really good at it." So he was teaching me the concept of fard kifaya. Find the fard kifaya. Find your superpower and go solve it. And in that journey, what I learned was something that made me very sad. I attended a conference at Indiana University, Lilly School of Philanthropy. And there I met a gentleman, Dr. Shadiq Siddiqui, who studies the Muslim nonprofit sector. This is 2015. And in his research, he has organizations like ISNA, like IQRA, like CARE, like MPAC. He has these organizations he's researching, like the big community centers. And his research concludes that 90% of American Muslim nonprofits will never fulfill their mission. Why? Because they don't have enough capacity. They lack financial resources and they lack human talent. And so when I sat there in that audience, I felt probably a lot like what you feel like. Sad. I sat there and I felt so sad. I said, this has to be solved. And inshallah, I'm going to try to solve it. And so we formed the Center on Muslim Philanthropy, and we said, we're going to study Muslim nonprofits further. We're going to try to understand the Muslim community so that when the next generation of leaders and problem solvers rise, they have targets and solutions to go implement in a better way, so that they can build better institutions on top of the ones that our founders have already established that are there. So I'm going to read off some important data to you and give you some prescriptions to take forward as we think about the future. Millennials are 52% of the American Muslim population. Millennials are 52% of the American Muslim population. Gen Xers are over 30%. Baby boomers are now less than 15%. And also, right now in the American Muslim community, we're in the middle of the largest transfer of wealth we will ever see. And that's because many folks like my father came in the 60s, built institutions and built wealth, and the research says their children aren't in need of their wealth. And so they're telling their parents, give it away, do something with it. So the largest transfer of wealth is taking place. Baby boomers are shrinking, millennials are growing. Largest segment. 29% of millennials are attending masjids. If 52% of the Muslim population are millennials, and of 52%, only 29 are attending the masjids, something's wrong. That's a very low number. 23% of Muslims are leaving Islam. 23% of Muslims are leaving Islam. 20% of those are accepting Christianity. 50% are saying they have no religion. 50% that are leaving Islam are saying no religion. No religion. 60% of American Muslims are not attending the masjid weekly. If you were to take all the masjids in the Chicagoland area, and you filled them up, it would miss 60% of the Muslim community because they're not attending. 26% they say they never go to the masjid at all. I'm driving to a point. I'm driving to a prescription, to solutions. And that's where I want you to leave as you leave today. 42% say they pray 5 times a day. 17% say they pray some salah. So what's interesting about this is even though many millennials are not coming to the masjid, they still pray salah. They still say Islam is important. That's the key. It's something we're doing that's missing out on engaging with them. So they're still saying I'm a Muslim. They're still saying I believe in Islam. The majority of them are. Now here's the interesting part. 64% of American Muslims say there is more than one way to interpret Islam. So the single prescription, they're saying, I'm not buying that anymore. That there's only one way to practice Islam. And actually in some of our anecdotal research, they're saying it turns them away from Islam when people say there's only one way to practice Islam. 52% say traditional understanding of Islam needs to be reinterpreted. That means half of millennials who are the fastest growing segment are saying that we need a reinterpretation of this because we can't make sense of it in our lives. We need a reinterpretation of it. We need some help. We believe we're Muslim. We love Islam. We pray. We need some help with it. We need some help making sense of it in our lives. Only 24% of American Muslims ages 18 to 29 say they're very happy. That's a very low percent. That's why you see mental health issues that are on the rise now. Only 24% of American Muslims are saying they are very happy. 55% of mosques follow a contextual approach and have a higher rate of community involvement. Whereas 45% of mosques follow interpretations embedded in traditional views of the past and have a lower rate of involvement. So what that means is if you're in this room and you intersect with a masjid, you manage a masjid, you work with a masjid, what I'm asking you to do is put the data in front of you and rethink your strategy. Rethink your strategy. Look at your strategy. According to the mosque study, mosques are not attracting a significant percentage of Generation Z and young millennials. We know that. The largest age group that attends the mosques, and largely those who control masjids, are those aged 35 to 65. Attendance and control is 35 to 65, as might be expected. So, in recognition, though, of the mosque's difficulty in attracting young adults, 60% of masjid leaders say they are not satisfied. So what it means is that if you're a masjid leader, you intuitively are not satisfied with your masjid's engagement with American Muslims. Which is a good thing, start having the conversation. Which is a good thing, start having the conversation. Let's go to philanthropy and Muslim giving. This is what's interesting. Millennials give more than their non-Muslim counterparts at their same age bracket, which is good. It means American Muslim millennials are more giving, they're giving sadaqah. That's a good thing. 65% to Muslim organizations, 55% outside the community. Now I work and I study American Muslim nonprofits, masjids, Islamic schools, nonprofit organizations. I teach at Indiana University and my class has Muslim nonprofit professionals in my classrooms. We all know one of the big problems is the money problem, right? Islamic Relief USA gave us a $500,000 grant, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them, a $500,000 grant to study Muslim giving, the first Muslim giving study in America. This study, coming out in the next few months, American Muslims donate $4 billion a year. Only $2 billion goes to Muslim organizations. Only $2 billion goes to Muslim organizations. So, essentially, if we engage better with American Muslim millennials and American Muslim young professionals, which are our kids and grandkids, which are our nieces and nephews, if we understand them better and we engage with them better, they are philanthropic, they love Islam, they want to practice Islam. If we engage with them better, the paradigm shifts. The resources shift to where we need it most, and that is to make a difference. American Muslim institutions, the work of Abidullah, Ghazi, and Taslima Ghazi established the foundation of Sunday school and Islamic school curriculums. 80% of Sunday schools and 50 to 60% of Islamic schools base their curriculum on their work. This is important. Many of you are founders, institutional builders here in the Chicagoland area. You funded these organizations. You went there every day. You made dua every day. You didn't build these institutions to only serve you. You built these institutions, just like Abidullah Ghazi did, to serve the future. I'm in Chicago, so I'll use a Chicago story. Dennis Rodman, one of the best rebounders in the game. When asked, how are you so good at rebounds? He said, I don't go where the ball is, I go where the ball is going. So if you paid attention, you heard me say where the American Muslim community is going. Which means we, the leaders in this room, need to drive the institutions in that direction. IQRA and the masjids and the Islamic schools and the curriculums in this room need to go where the market's going. Not where it was. And not where we want it to be. Because the data says the market's leaving. It has left. And that is exactly what I would say he wanted. As his son said, he's a bit crazy. Most entrepreneurs are. And if he was sitting and hearing this data right now, what would he say about shaping the curriculum? What would he say about shaping the books and the stories? He would ask for probably all my links. And he would be studying and digesting it. He would be meeting me at Indiana University. He would ask for all my graduate students to sit there and go over the data. And he would pull the curriculums and say, let's reinvent this stuff for this audience. Today, there's just close to 6,000 Muslim nonprofits registered with the IRS as religious, 6,000. There's another 4,000 estimated registered Muslim nonprofits, but not registered as Islamic, non-religious, but they're Muslim-run, Muslim-founded. So 10,000. The Muslim nonprofit sector in this country, 10,000. Total nonprofits, 1.4 million. We're still a drop in the bucket. We're still a drop in the bucket. But out of these 10,000, 90% lack resources. They lack resources. Okay? Out of those 10,000, there's now 3,000 masjids in America. Hassan Bagby's mosque study says 3,000 masjids in America. That's a third of the sector. A third of the American Muslim institution is masajids. It's masjids. So if we do not take the masjids where the market's going, they will be like Andersonville, Illinois. Who came, they built their churches. They wanted their kids and their generations to be in the church. Then they built their businesses. Then they built their colleges, North Park University. Then they built their hospitals and their clinics. Study what happened next. Their generations moved away and they ended up having to sell most of their institutions. And the community's gone. So let us take our institutions where the market's going. Where the American Muslim youth, the American Muslim millennials are going. Let's get back to the institutions. The buildings are there. Buildings are great. But these buildings, do they have impactful programming? Do we have effective leadership? And do we have efficient operating models to execute on strategy? This is now where we need to take our institutions next. We need our institutions to be living, breathing organisms. Organisms that evolve and lead the community. Let's get back to my nephew. My nephew is like many other American Muslim millennials. Many of you know someone in your family right now that's probably left Islam. Many of you have a niece or a nephew or a grandchild who's walking around with earphones and video gaming. Many of you have a grandchild, you have a niece, you have a nephew, you have a child who's really questioning Islam, but you haven't had that conversation yet because you're just maybe a little too scared to have it. And you don't know where to take them, where to lead them, how to engage with them, how to connect with them. To drive that change, it's going to take this knowledge and it's going to take engagement. It's going to take reinvention of how we think about where our institutions need to go. And that is my ask. That is how we envision the future. Have conversations with your children and your grandchildren in your homes. Create a safe space. Learn from them. And if you are in a position of impact and influence, start driving those institutions to go where the market's going. It's not about bringing them to a world we want, but rather infusing Tawheed, the values and the beliefs of Islam, in spaces where they want to be, so they can find their comfort in being a Muslim. Another study that's coming out is the internalized effect of Islamophobia on the American Muslim identity, where American Muslim youth, they look to say, hey, you know what? This Muslim club is not a club I want to be in. It's not the cool club. That's called internalized effect of Islamophobia. And it's another challenge, another complexity that we have to overcome. And that only happens if and when we start thinking about our institutions and thinking about them for the next 30 to 50 years. And that's the ask, is go back to your institutions, to your groups, and revisit your vision of where you want to take that organization. Revisit where you want to take that organization. And if that dream is not landing and intersecting with the dream of where the American Muslim community is going, then you risk your organization no longer existing. Number two, a strong and profound strategy to get there, which includes impactful programming. Not redundant programming, but impactful programming, and inclusive of effective fundraising. Effective fundraising. And lastly, bring a team in that can execute. One of my colleagues today, his research is proving that the majority of American Muslim nonprofits today are charities for their own staff, rather than charities that serve the general public. And so I ask you all, as leaders, to go back and reimagine the future, the next 30 to 50 years. Drive strategic plans for programmatic impact and build teams of excellence. This, I believe, was the dreams of our late brother Abidullah Ghazi. I don't think he wanted to stop here. I think he wanted to take these curriculums, these books, this knowledge, and actually drive change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala got him and got it as far as it can go. Now it's up to all of us to drive these institutions into the future. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, give sabr to the family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this organization and help us all reimagine the future and drive our organizations to intersect with become vehicles to take these youth and help them become leaders of the future, to drive the baton forward. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.